Welcome back, recovering Loveaholics, to Confessions of a Loveaholic. I am your host, Emmy Hernandez, and I have an epic guest for you today. This expert that I have for you, I'm so excited to chat to her because we're going to be talking about something that we haven't talked about today on the show before, and it is going to be about our gut in all the senses when it comes to the nervous system, what it does, and our intuition. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Brandi Mackenzie is a nervous system coach who helps women who have tried it all but still feel like they should be further along. Her work helps women help identify why we feel stuck in certain patterns and recognize that these are often responses from the nervous system. We are huge fans of the nervous system on this show. Brandi teaches that growing into the level of success you want in any area of your life, including love, begins with the understanding and breaking those patterns. She is the host of the Biology of Success podcast and the author of Love Your Gut, a 6-week guide to restoring your nutrition and trusting your intuition. Brandi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to be going deep into this, Brandi. You and I were talking a little bit in the green room, as we call it, behind the scenes before we started. And I was telling you about why I was so excited to talk to you about the gut and the nervous system and nutrition and intuition. And many of you don't know this story, so I'll share briefly here. And then we're going to go into asking Brandi all these questions because Brandi's going to be like, yep, I know exactly what's going on, Emmy. So part of my story was that when I was 16 years old, I was diagnosed with like every single gastrointestinal disease that you can imagine. I had Crohn's, I had IBS, I had all these other things that the doctors said you will be on medicine for the rest of your life. Okay. So at 16, I had my first endoscopy. Doctor told me there's nothing we can do. I went off to college. At 20, had another endoscopy. At this point, I had been taking 20 to 22 painkillers a day and like Zantac and omeprazole and everything just to stop the acid buildup in my body because I was in so much pain. But what happened was I was starting to wake up in pools of my own blood. So I was bleeding out of my nose in my sleep and not realizing, and then I started to faint in the middle of like the day. So it started to get pretty bad. After my second endoscopy at 20, my doctors at Berkeley told me, Emmy, your intestinal tract is so geriatric, like we've never seen something this severe. We are sorry to tell you, you will not survive your 30th birthday. Okay. Why am I telling you that? We're on a love podcast. What's that got to do with it? Okay. I'm telling you this now and sort of setting up the structure of why I have Brandi on the show. This is because I had to go on a healing journey for myself, for my health, way before I could be in the vibration of true love for me to be able to attract Matt. I needed to heal my own body in order for me to have a relationship with myself and truly pay attention to what my body needed and not ignore it. So this is where we are. So on that note, and Brandi didn't know that story yet. She's hearing it right now for the first time. So she's like, what the fuck did we just do? I mean, you just like opened up a can of worms. That's my job, to open up cans of worms. So Brandi, how did you get on this journey with the gut and nutrition and intuition? What does the gut have to do with the intuition anyway?
Okay, I'll start with the first question because that's maybe a little easier. So, similar to you, but not quite the same circumstance, I also had a lot of digestive dysfunction in my 20s and into my 30s. And I also had a family history that showed up with a lot of digestive dysfunction. So, for the most part, I just saw that as normal. And it wasn't until I just started sort of having a personal health evolution, growing up a bit, trying to do things differently, take different care of myself, that I realized how not normal my gut stuff was. And so I started exploring that. And I was also diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I had a lot of inflammatory dysfunction. a lot of downstream effect that also happens when the gut is inflamed like that. And so I started my own path of studying nutrition. I was also trained as a holistic chef around the same time. And so I was basically starting to experiment with myself. I don't know if you had this experience, but I was seeing a lot of doctors. I was being given, I was taking more of a holistic approach. So I was being given a ton of supplements and being told to eliminate more foods. And well, that's not working. So maybe you should just have juice for the next month, like some pretty extreme things. And I had this moment where I walked into my doctor's office, and the only advice that they were able to give me that day was that I should start getting prepared for some IVs and some more sort of intense therapy. And I just remember walking out thinking, like, that can't be the only way. That doesn't feel right for me. And so I used my experience as a chef. I was still in school for nutrition at that time, but I started playing with, what does it mean to look at food not just on like an intake perspective, but like, what are the other energies around it? What is my relationship with food? And what is my relationship with myself? Because that's a very big mirror there. And ultimately, what happened is I spent time experimenting with myself and realized there was a lot more to it than just eat this, don't eat that. And that I had to really trust not just my sort of instinct about things and how to take care of myself, but I also had to trust my body's response to that. So, for instance, eating a food and it feeling okay when it should be maybe labeled as a bad food, like I had to trust that, or trust that something that's like really great for everyone else was not great for me. And so I went through this process of a healing journey, and it went so much deeper than just food. And so it was really about me learning how to nourish myself, and not just with nutrition, but in other areas of my life as well. And ultimately, to me, we know that there is so much science behind what we call gut feelings and gut wisdom. And so um, that is the connection for me between food and nutrition and intuition.
I love this, Brandy. I love the whole, you're right. We do have all this science, although people don't really truly understand it yet, although we use it a lot in our society. Like, I just have this gut feeling, right? I just have this gut feeling. And we don't really, for me, I know it's intuition, right? I know that's intuition now. But we also know that the nervous system can sometimes make us feel, you were telling me about how it can make us feel safe in situations where they're unsafe, and then vice versa, right? When there's a little bit of confusion there. So I'm going to take us to the other extreme right now, and sort of going straight into the nervous system. And I promise you, audience, like all of this is going to like connect in the middle. So Brandy, so how does our nervous system get in the way of what we want, whether it be more money, better health, or potential love and relationships?
Yeah. So to bridge that gap here, there is something worth knowing, that we actually have a specific sort of subset nervous system called the enteric nervous system that lives in what I call our gut. And so that is the real science piece, right? And so where there's actual gut feelings, like there's a massive bundle of nerves that speak to us through our gut. And the way that that can feel um, hard to trust for a lot of us is because, on a bigger picture level, on a more systemic level, when we have dysfunction in our gut or in our general nervous system, and when I say dysfunction, I mean sort of chronic dysregulation, or what we might call, a lot of anxious feelings, or even being in our head a lot, sort of things that we almost consider normal in today's busy world. But those are what I would consider nervous system dysfunctions. And so when there's dysregulation and dysfunction globally in our nervous system, that gets in our way because it really skews our perception. It makes it hard for us to feel like we can trust ourselves. It makes it hard for us to feel like we can trust not just those body sort of gut reaction sensations, but also, you know, um, our emotions or our reactions to things in life as well. So, to finish off that question that you asked, the way this gets in our way is because our nervous system is wired for familiarity, and it will do anything to protect us from something that feels unfamiliar. And when it's unfamiliar, our nervous system labels that as unsafe, right? And so, to a certain degree, we may stay in what I call sort of familiar chaos rather than leaning into unfamiliar peace.
OMG. OMG. So first of all, I had never heard of what did you call the subset nervous system?
Enteric, Enteric, enteric nervous system.
Thank you so much. I had no idea we had a subset. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. Do you talk about this in your book?
I talk about the enteric nervous system briefly.
Okay, cool. The fact that again, this is a brand new term for me, so I'm getting excited. I geek out about gut stuff. So, and the nervous system. So this is so critical because this is one of the key things that I had to do in my healing on my love journey to truly be in a happy, healthy relationship with my soulmate for 7 years is, to your point around familiar chaos, right? Most of us grow up in some sort of level of dysfunction. Our parents did the best that they could. Okay. This is not a blaming game. It's not a judgment game. Everyone's doing the best that they can. For me, my nervous system learned very early on that, I'm the oldest of 7 children. So I kind of became parentified at a very young age, and I became mom at a very young age. Okay. I didn't birth any children, but I had to start raising children at a very young age. It's just how it's done in Mexican households. So what happened was, because I was parentified so young and I was the oldest and I was in charge of literally my siblings' lives, like if they got hurt, I got in trouble. If they almost died, I got in trouble. Like it was like, that's a lot of pressure for a little kid, right? So my body started reacting very quickly to how to get attention. And it was not on purpose, I can tell you this. But what happened is, in order for me to get attention, because I wasn't the baby, was my body would get really sick. So
Mm.
create these moments of, like, by the time I was a teenager, once a year, I would spend 4 or 5 days vomiting in my mom's bathroom. And it was a way for my nervous system to get attention from my mom. It was a way for it to be like, hey, well, this is how we can get love, right? So it created this very dangerous loop around that. And because my nervous system associated, so my mom is a narcissist. Okay, this is not true for everyone, and I don't say this term lightly. Okay, I've studied narcissism for the last decade. Okay, so do not throw around the term just because of that. She is clinically a narcissist. And I learned at a very young age, since I was a little girl, to not listen to my own needs. It was what she told me, and she gaslighted the fuck out of me pretty consistently. So because of that, I started gaslighting myself to the point where I can tell you, I would hold in my urine for as long as I could, even if I didn't have anything important going on, just until I had to wait until it was an emergency. And the same thing with having to go number 2. I would not let my body go to the bathroom. So it would get to the point by the time I was 16, 17, where, Brandi, I wouldn't have a bowel movement for maybe 5 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
Okay. It got pretty severe because my body started like suppressing everything. So it was like, okay, going to the bathroom is a bad thing. Why? Because I had to be taking care of everyone else. So again, this happened at such a young age that when I got older, the pattern was still there. So I was repeating the same patterns. And when it came to love, guess what? I was ignoring all the red flags. Why? Because I had been ignoring the red flags in my own body this whole fucking time. So how was I going to understand them from the outside? So chaos felt good. Chaos felt like love.
Yeah.
Toxicity felt like love. And that's why I had to do the rewiring with my own body, to rewire it, my nervous system, to then feel like healthy love and good men that weren't gaslighting me. Oh, wait, that's good love? Not the ones that were treating me like shit. So this is where a lot of women get caught up in like, oh, I like the bad boys. It's like, no, you're just, your nervous system is familiar with chaos. That's different than liking the bad boys. It's not a type. It's your nervous system type, not your heart's type.
I love the way you said that. Yeah, it's your nervous system type. It's not, there's a phrase that I'm thinking of that I just feel like I want to say out loud. Like, it's not your fault, it's just your default.
That was good. That is tweetable or whatever. It's Xable. What I don't even know. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's just your default. Oh, that is good, Brandi. Thank you.
Mm.
Do you want
Yeah,
to take us down to there are some patterns that our nervous system sort of sets up. How are patterns created, and can we break these nervous system patterns?
that's a perfect segue from that tweetable. What do we call that these days now that it's not that anymore? Because we do have default patterns that our nervous system feels comfortable with, feels familiar with. And those, as we've already talked about, don't always mean they're the best thing or the right thing for us. And so, just as you mentioned in your personal story, we are all going to deal with different levels of different experiences of trauma in our life. And whether those are with a big T or a small t, it doesn't matter in the sense that one is not, better or worse than the other. I just want that to be clear, because so many people feel like if they don't have big T traumas, then everything was fine. So when we have these experiences of trauma in our life, really what's happening is we have a bodily reaction. So we have these external circumstances that happen, we have these experiences, but on a biological level, there are reactions. So the central nervous system, which is what we often mean when we just say the nervous system, the central nervous system essentially patterns us to those experiences. And so even if it was a somewhat small event, if we had a reaction or a prolonged period of overwhelm or some kind of intense emotion like shame, for instance, it creates a real imprint. And I think of those as like a pathway. And so those pathways become the default pathways. And that's sort of um, where we live. We live in those default pathways. So the biological pathways and the nervous system, when we feel a certain way in our nervous system and our nervous system responds, then we behave in a certain way. So the way I describe it is our biology drives our behaviors. And so then those behaviors are the things that become repeatable. Those are the things that then feel like our personality, or something's wrong with us, or whatever stories we tell ourselves about not being able to move forward in a way that we want, or not being able to find that love or that relationship that we want. So it's essentially a pathway building, and it comes from early childhood experiences, but it doesn't end there. We sort of build upon those as we age, because we still have traumas as we age as well. But there will always sort of be those core imprints that when something has a similar feel to it circumstantially, then our nervous system will go, hold on a second, this feels familiar in a way that I know what to do with it. And I'm going to pull out all the stops to make sure we don't go there again.
So Brandi, when we find ourselves, and feel free, you were telling me when we were in the green room that you have been married for 22 years. Congratulations. Right. And we were discussing around, for those of you who are listening, who are looking to get into a relationship or are currently in one, maybe it's the beginning, maybe you've been together for a really long time. How does our nervous system and understanding about our nervous system and how we operate, because I think in society, we think the nervous system is like the body, right? Like, what's that got to do with the brain? It's like, no, what's driving the behaviors in the brain? Like, it's all connected, right?
Mm.
So in your learning of this, how has it helped your relationship and you being able to sort of operate more effectively, I'm not even sure where my question is with that, but I'm gonna let you take it because I know that you know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. So, okay. So the way that our nervous system then creates these patterns, it shows up as behaviors for us. And so then we'll sort of repeat behaviors that we might call self-sabotaging, or that might get us in the wrong circumstance. And there are also ways that we can just sort of have oh shit moments. And so when I'm thinking about my relationship with my husband, we've been together 22 years, but we didn't get married for a while. And so there were all these years where I thought to myself, and I remember saying this as like a young, maybe not a child, but like definitely preteen. I remember saying, I'm never getting married and I'm never having kids. And that was an imprint on me because I think even at that time, on a subconscious level, I was like, I'm not repeating what's going on around me here, because there was a lot of dysfunction in the way that I grew up. And so I always said, I'm not getting married, I'm not having kids. And then I met this man who I was like, oh, maybe this is like a fling. This is not going to last. And then, here we are 22 years later. And so I met him. And the thing about him is that he was instantly safe. He was easy to be with, he was easy to be around. Something interesting about me is that I actually always chose good partners, um, which I think is a little, I don't know, it's interesting to me, just perspective wise, but I'm really happy about that. And so for all these years, he had heard me say, I'm not getting married. I don't want to get married. I don't care about getting married. And then suddenly I was like, why aren't we married? And he had a job where we moved around a lot, and internationally as well. And we were going to be moving internationally. And I was like, I really think we should get married. And I think that we need to do that to make life easier when we're moving a lot. And, I sort of came up with all these excuses. But the truth is, it was like I was feeling something where I was like, oh, maybe this isn't safe. Maybe this isn't going to last. I started having those doubts come in. And then we got engaged. And that year after we got engaged, we moved abroad, and I had a complete meltdown. And I started like really questioning if that's what I wanted to do, because I was suddenly feeling so scared about that prospect. So, very opposite to you, I'm an only child, only grandchild on one side, and then the oldest of some cousins on the other. Every single person in my entire lineage had been divorced at least once, if not multiple times. Cousins that were 10 years younger than me had been divorced. And here I was, like, wanting to get married. It was very confusing. And I will never forget, I picked up a book by Liz Gilbert, of Eat, Pray, Love. And she has a book called Committed. And I ended up reading that book, and it was such a beautiful necessity at that moment in my life, because it really helped me to see, like, this wasn't about me. I was looking at patterns of my past and going into fear because of that. So that was a huge hurdle that I had to overcome, is that I was in safety, but then that felt unsafe, right? Because it wasn't something that I was used to. And so I had to go through my own experience of that. And just as the years have gone by, and in this last chunk of time where I've really, really focused on nervous system health, and I feel like I've been working on my traumas for 20 years, but I was never working on my nervous system until like the last several years. And I feel like it's important to say that, because there's so many people, quote unquote, addressing trauma, but they're not addressing the nervous system. And I find that most people think it's sort of thought work, or, talk therapy or mindset, and it's all up in the head, versus like my perspective is we actually need to look in the body for it. So as I've been creating safety in my own body, I don't have to look outside myself for that. And that's a thing I would really want your listeners to hear, is that so often we can get caught up in looking for that safety outside of ourselves. But what we need to do is really focus on that internally.
100%. This is so powerful for those of you who are listening. Really, really take this in. I 100% agree with you, Brandi. I see a lot of people who say they're trauma informed, and I'm sure they are, but I really am concerned with those who are getting the help and it's just mindset, right? And they're thinking their way to feeling better. And the stuff that I do with recodes is a lot of commanding the brain to tell the body what to do and vice versa. So it actually scans the body, be like, hey, where is their density? Where is their gray energy? Where is this? We actually even call upon the DNA helix to come on, like, okay, what needs to be reset? What no longer serves you, right? To your point earlier, you said, it's not your fault, it's your default. And I think this is so important. I've never said this before, but people need to understand that your nervous system is inherited first, right? So like your DNA, your genes are inherited, right? So you're coming in already with a pre-packaged level of universal instincts, human instincts, and then what's passed down through your family, including trauma, right? And then the stuff that you learn in your level of consciousness as well. Kind of like you saw all the divorces, you're like, well, why would I want to do that, right? So it's like all these triggers. So when people talk about like, oh my God, that triggers me, or I'm triggered, the trigger's not happening up here, babe. It's happening in the nervous system. So on that, like with that, Brandi, can you walk us through what would a session look like with you? Like I'm really curious. Like this is so juicy to like really help people understand what does it mean to do, and this is different than doing body work or breath work, like it's included, right? It's a part of that. But I really want to help people understand your process and how you would walk someone through what does it look like to even, what does it mean to look in the body? Like, are we supposed to cut it up? Like, we're not doing an autopsy here, right? Like, not, I mean, no real scalpel here, but what does that mean? How do we start that process?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And I'm going to talk big picture first. So, the approach that I use, I've named it the AHA approach because we all have so many AHAs when we go through this process. And it's an acronym. The first A we start with is awareness. The H stands for health and habits. And then the second A is for assimilation, because then we have to integrate the things that we're learning and experiencing. And so that is the big picture process. On a, smaller picture level, what we really have to start working with is how our body feels. And I am someone that, because I had been in sort of the wellness industry, it's been almost 20 years that I've been working in that industry. I thought that I was so connected to my body. I'd been teaching people about intuition, and prior to doing nutrition work, I was a yoga therapist. Like, I thought I was so dialed in. And when I went into this deeper realm of nervous system awareness, I realized that I was still quite cut off from my body, that I could understand sensations, and I could understand my intuition as an example, but there was so much more nuance and layers to it. And so the way that we really start is, what is our body feeling? So instead of when an emotion or a behavior or something like that comes up, most people say, God, what is this? Instead, we want to start asking, where is this? So it sounds similar to the scan that you mentioned that you do with your work. So we think about, where is this emotion in my body? When I feel good or bad, the good is a lot harder to find, but it's harder to identify for people in their bodies, because finding the quote unquote pain or where things feel quote unquote bad is easier. But that's where we start. We start with finding where this is in the body. And then we integrate really simple technique practices that offer safety for your nervous system. So a really simple example is like using your five senses or scanning the room. So we are identifying in that moment, when I look around my space and I see that I am in a safe space, we have to communicate to the nervous system that we're in a safe place. So it's really simple things like that we start to build safety. And then after we build a sense of safety, because the safety is what we need in order to trust the sensation, then we move into support. And so how do we feel support? So since we were talking about the gut, one of the most simple things that is profound for a lot of people is hugging a pillow over the gut, because there is that enteric nervous system and there's so many nerves there. If you just hug a pillow there, it can literally allow your shoulders to relax, your jaw to relax, to feel a sense of release, because for so many of us, that's a place where we grip and hold a lot of tension. So we want to soften that. And so these very simple practices are part of a process that I help people integrate and build into their lives. And what we do is we use these not just when we feel like we need them or we feel triggered or challenged, we use them to build more capacity for what we can feel and handle over time. So it's this process of starting with safety and then building in support. And once we build those two together, then we have more capacity for what we can handle. We have the ability to be triggered because we're humans and we will always be triggered, to then bounce back more quickly. And through that awareness process that I mentioned, we're also really tracking the nervous system and understanding the way that your biology is reactive, the downstream effect that you feel. So do you get digestive stuff that happens when you feel really anxious or stressed? Like I have a particular spot in my shoulder that gets flared up when I have a certain level of dysregulation. So the awareness is understanding how we feel and then connecting the dots about the nervous system responses from the biology and the sensations. And then we move that into the behaviors. So it's a very integrative process, but the awareness is sort of the biggest, the most foundational work that we do. And then we look at how do we tweak our health? Like, are there dietary things that we need to look at? Do we need to improve our mineral balance? Do we need to move differently? There are a lot of different things here. But my biggest thing about any shifts that we make around this is that they have to feel simple enough that we can integrate them, because that's what we have to do in order to create change. So it's this incremental process that most people tell me. They say, like, this topic that you use is very complex, but you make it so simple in the way that we can approach it and shift things for ourselves.
I absolutely love that. And I think you are doing life-saving work. And I don't say that lightly. If it hadn't been for the people that I went to at the time that I did, I'm not sure that I actually would be alive today. I'm almost 38 and I'm quote unquote 8 years past my expiration date, according to my doctors, whom I don't work with anymore, by the way. I haven't seen those doctors. And I don't really work with a lot of Western medicine anymore because they love to pump you up with pills. You know, big pharma. It's real. I lived it. So now I'm really into the holistic approach. I love that you brought up, this was earlier in the episode that you were saying about like how some foods, like recognizing that some foods are good for me, even though they're really great for other people. And like, I like my body, like I'll give you an example of something you'd be like, wait, what? My body hates bananas. My body cannot handle bananas. It feels like poison. And you might be thinking like, but they're really good for you, Emmy. They might be good for you. They're not good for me. And there are other things that are quote unquote considered unhealthy that my body absolutely loves. My body, my taste buds and my body, right? And my job is to find what are the things that my taste buds and my body align with. Because I can tell you from someone who was at one point for an entire year allergic to drinking water. No joke. Okay. So that's the problem when you only work with Western society and Western medicine, where they're like, oh, well, just eliminate everything that hurts you. How the beep, tell me now, are you supposed to eliminate water? Like it was the only thing keeping me alive. Yet it's what was hurting me. And the thing was, my nervous system was so dysregulated that it was seeing the one element keeping me alive as poison. Okay. This is what it means to be dysregulated, where it's like literally like you have to have water. Like that's not, that is not in question of whether like your body, according to my grandpa, he just needs Coke, right? He lives off Coca-Cola. Water is bad for him. And you know what? He's 90 something years old. So good job, grandpa, right? Coca-Cola for the win. And this is why it's so important to be doing this work, because I can tell you that when I started doing conscious intentional work around healing my body and my dysregulation. And this is still ongoing, by the way, but I did a lot of the work in 2015, completely changed my life. And in 3 months, I was almost 100% symptom free compared to the last 15 years of my life of taking all those painkillers. So for those of you listening, I want you to truly understand if anything that we've touched on today has resonated with you, please, 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 please reach out to Brandi. She's got you covered. This is one of the areas of her expertise. She's got a lot of magical zones of genius. I can tell already. But this is an area that is so precious and so dear to my heart. It is not an area that I specialize in. It's something that I got really good at for myself, but not really an area that I work on a lot, especially on the gut stuff with clients, because it's so much work for me that I don't want to have to do that for others. So this is an area where I do not specialize in, and I send out to experts like Brandi Mackenzie. So on that note, my lovely, can you please tell us what is the best way to connect with you? How can people find out more about you and your services and how to book you?
Absolutely. And thank you for that. This work is so powerful, and I felt that in myself and in others. So I'm just feeling like, yes, I want to reiterate that. The best place to find me is on Instagram. I share a lot there. I'm present there. My handle is Brandi H. Mackenzie. You can also go to my website, brandimackenzie.com, and there's plenty of information there on how to work with me and what I do and how I do it as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. And don't worry, everyone, everything's going to be in the show notes as well. Brandi, any final words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Hmm. So we briefly talked about how the more regulated our nervous system is and the more safety we feel, the more we can trust ourselves. And I also want to say that it also makes it easier to trust others and communicate with others as well. So when we feel more connected to ourselves, it's easier for us to say what we really mean and really ask for our needs to be met in a really beautiful and regulated way. And so from the level of going into relationship and building love, this inner sense of safety and inner sense of regulation for our system, it's like it has so many ripple effects.
I love that. Thank you, Brandi. For my listeners, remember, you deserve safe love. I love you all so much. We'll see you on the next episode.